Welcome to In Conclusion. I'm Kejan, Haynes. Let's get started. So if you saw last week's episode, we were talking about energy and energy reporting, why it needs to be on the front pages. Now, I'm sure you all read or heard the Prime Minister talking about accepting HTC houses as bribes. But in that same speech in Cuba, Mrs. Prasad-Bissessar, in the face of opposition leader Dr. Keith Rowley criticizing her for essentially ignoring the energy sector, she was talking about a major source of energy revenue in the country.
The Lauren Manitou field has proven reserves of just over 10 trillion cubic feet. 73.75% belongs to Venezuela and the rest to Trinidad and Tobago. Venezuela's state oil company, PDVSA, is to work with U.S. company Chevron to develop an offshore natural gas field. Following several years of talks, the deal was signed a couple years ago, but work is yet to start. While in Panama for the Energy Summit, Prime Minister Kamala Prasad-Bissessar approached the CEO of Chevron and the head of PDVSA on this matter.
Our officials have been meeting ministers back and forward. What is the problem? Why can we not get this project done?
All right, and you remember there's also a major merger between Shell and BG, the fourth largest in history. Well, the energy minister says it's a good thing, and it might even speed up the production of the fields that the Prime Minister was talking about. Energy Minister Kevin Ramnarine says Shell and Chevron have a presence in Venezuela, and that can mean quicker progress for the fields.
So it may actually be to our benefit. It may actually help speed up the entire process of the commercialization of that gas. I'm sure Shell is interested in the commercialization of that gas, as they are assets that are fully in the Trinidad and Tobago waters.
Minister Ramnarine says Shell will bring the largest pool capital in the world and the most advanced technology in the energy sector. The deal is still in its early stages, and it will take a year of regulatory approvals from countries around the world, including Trinidad and Tobago. And funny enough, this vital story was kind of pushed to the back pages or not even covered at all. Anyway, many opportunities over the next year for us to cover this story. But as I mentioned, there was an HTC draw. Now, can we talk about this random selection for a bit and how it played out? So there you have this screen with names popping up every 3 seconds. Meanwhile, you're bombarded by not-so-subliminal messages on the side about how great the HTC is. But then when I first heard about this, I wondered, all right, how is it going to play off? So I was thinking actually a cement truck filled with papers, mixing it up, and maybe the housing minister pulling it out and pulling out the applications. But maybe in retrospect, this looks a little bit better. But how do we even know that it's random? Now, he says that there are auditors from KPMG that were there supervising. But I think this is where we lapse a little bit because we're just taking their word for it. So there should have been stories leading up to this. Maybe what is the science behind the computer, the algorithm, who provided the computer? Is it a Mac or a PC? Could it also pick the teams for the NBA playoffs? I don't know. There's a missed opportunity there. Let's move on. Mark Bassant had a two-part series on ISIS this week. In part one, he revealed that there were a list of suspected terrorists coming from the country going to train in Syria, some of whom were questioned by authorities. Now, after the story aired, the parents of one of the men came forward.
They said that his son was questioned about his alleged connections to Syria.
They said they got a report on him that he's traveling to Syria and he's an ISIS partner.
His mother refuted the authorities' claims.
He's not in any terrorist or ISIS or anything like that. He's just a nice, loving child, there with us as his parents, looking after us.
But of course, if you look at the CNC3 version, it's more or less the same thing, except for this.
Ishmael says the Muslim community is concerned about the false and misleading information in the news and says this is not the first time an error like this has been made. He's calling on the Ministry of National Security to get its act together and for the media house to stop fabricating terrorists.
Whoa, shots fired. Time out. All right, so you may want to argue that, Mark Bassant said there was no record of the imam's return, and but yet the family was able to provide a picture of the passport, which says that he did. But of course, you have to remember, when I spoke to Mark, he says he's quoting from a document, an official government document, so there was nothing fabricated, something that, that other report didn't quite acknowledge. And for the rest of the report, the family did confirm the story. He was in Indonesia, and he was interviewed by the police. So the last part about us fabricating is a bit of a cheap shot. Anyway, Forgetting ISIS, we actually have bigger problems in the country because we live in a place where a snake could knock out a transformer and leave thousands in the country without water for 3 days. All right, that's some hashtag third world living right there. But moving on. And I hope that this is the last time I have to talk about bloggers on this show. So after the Pearl Harbor-esque destruction of the alleged PP bloggers in the When Bloggers Attack article, everyone was looking forward to part 2, the PNM. And the headline was PNM pokes fun at PM. The story got a lot of negative backlash, and not without justification, because there was a line that said, quote, the supporters of the PNM in their Facebook postings create memes, videos, and cartoons to poke fun at some of the alleged vulnerabilities of the key People's Partnership office holders. Now, this is in contrast to the People's Partnership supporters who the Express found used race as a central part of their attacks on PNM high-level officials and those they deem to be supporters. Now, if you read that, it definitely comes off as a bit sympathetic and about as balanced as trying to put a brick on one side of a seesaw and the other a folder page. Let's take a break. We'll be right back. Here's your 8 o'clock news headline. Remember, it's satire. Welcome back. So the Media Association has a new president, Francesca Hawkins, but the election that took place last week wasn't without a little bit of controversy. Go figure, the media people weren't able to issue a clear press release, which resulted in some misunderstanding of the voting process. And some of the candidates, they couldn't vote, but the issue was resolved and a revote took place, and the new executive took their place, hopefully for the next 2 years. And one of the first things that the new MAT president was asked to do was to deal with MAT's constitution, its finances, and those pesky bloggers that we told you about earlier. But unfortunately, the actual first act of the Media Association was to send 2 offers of condolence on behalf of the media fraternity. First, Mohan Jaikaran, businessman, creator of Win TV, who died suddenly of a heart attack on Sunday.
Would always tell us stories, and I'd never forget the stories about the time he almost got locked up in China, and the time he had to run from the rioting mob in Haiti because Mo's been all over. And, my fondest memories would be his storytelling.
There was a song that I sang, Talawa, and he was one of the biggest fans of that particular selection. And I remember him. I was not an employee here at Win Communications at the time, and he called me in for a meeting, and he wanted to do a show around that word Talawa and around that song. So definitely it would have been one of my fondest memories of him.
Head of News Sheldon Yearwood assured Mr. J's legacy will never be forgotten.
This is a rough transition for all of us. Win Communications was Mr. Jaikaran, period. He lived, he breathed, he really wanted to see this company grow, and we are here. We're gonna stand by his legacy. We're gonna stand by his dream. And try out and make him proud.
And then there was Sandra Chowti from The Guardian and The Express, who passed away on Monday after a long battle with cancer.
Tell you that this was a second round. Sandra fought this disease fiercely.
Her former colleague and friend at The Express recalled a care for those close to her, the environment, and a thoroughness that made her respected among peers and competitors alike.
She was a perfectionist. She sought to get every detail right. Every word had to be carefully crafted for perfection. She treasured her credibility, which, as far as I know, never came into question.
She hasn't been at this desk for over 6 months, but now her colleagues and friends must relinquish the hope of her return.
They will be missed. So on to some a little bit happier news. CNC3's Otto Carrington has been going around the country profiling people who have overcome adversity and made their mark on society. This week he featured 8-year-old Danica Linton, who was born with a condition known as agrogyposis multiplex congenita, and she melted even my cold heart.
Whatever Danica puts her mind to do, she does it.
Danica says watching against the odds gave her courage to share her story.
I want the world to know how I'm born. When I saw Celine, all I wanted to tell her was she doesn't have to be shy and just believe in herself. But I want to be able to use the toilet by myself. I do not need to have anybody helping me. I could bathe by myself and eat certain things by myself. I could go in the fridge, like on higher places by myself without anybody getting it for me.
Danica said she wants to become a lawyer, and she's adamant that one day she will use her hands.
And if the story wasn't inspiring enough, and it just blew up on social media, on Thursday night, they brought her on set.
So we got a special guest in studio. Danica is here, Danica Linton. I don't know if you recall earlier this week in our segment Against the Odds, we featured Danica. She told you quite bravely and quite confidently her story. And now Danica continues to live her dreams here on the CNC3 set. Welcome, Danica.
Thank you.
It's good to have you.
Very good to have you.
And you have a story to tell us tonight. So you can go ahead and deliver your story to the nation.
The Young's Training and Employment Program is telling young people to be their own bosses.
She wants to be a lawyer, but she might come and take my job one day. You know, every time you get a little jaded about this job, you have to remember it's stories like these that make it worth it. Let's take a break. We'll be right back. Welcome back. So if you want to insult someone in the media, especially if you're in the media yourself, you call them young. You say, oh, you're so young, you don't know about this, you don't know about the politics, you're so young and in your career, you can't really tell me anything. I was told that just about 3 times alone this week. I took it as a compliment, actually. But probably the biggest part of Mohan Jaikaran's legacy other than creating Win TV, will be his investment in young people. So today, in a new collaboration with Costat's Journalism School, we're letting some of their students take over the show. That's why I'm sitting down. So they're going to interview me. I have no idea what they're going to ask, but I'm kind of a coward, so I brought with me a guest, Radio Jagrity's Vishala Ganesh, and so we're going to treat this like a press conference. So, ladies and gentlemen of the media, welcome, and before you begin, just state your name and ask your question. This is your turn.
Hi, my name is Nicholas Ushman Singh. I was from Costa as Kejan Haynes mentioned earlier. Good question to you. As you say, you've been young in the business, or young as a journalist in what we have today. Would you say that that is a setback to who you are as a journalist when it comes to handling stories, when it comes to being more complicated than usual?
Well, at some point, you have to be young at some point. So I don't think it's a setback at all. Maybe there might be some things that I may not always have the context to the historical background, because some of, if you've lived something as opposed to having to read about it, it's a difference. But it shouldn't set you back at all. I think a lot of times you have young journalists who go to press conferences and they have valid questions and they're afraid because they see all these veterans around and they're afraid to look foolish or something like that. So I don't think it sets me back.
So you get the respect that is due as a young journalist.
You still have to earn your respect no matter what you do. If you go in and you ask a silly question, they're going to make fun of you, sure. But you bounce back and you're only as good as your last story. So today, maybe someone respects me. Tomorrow, I write a horrible story. Everybody loses that respect.
Okay. So advice when it comes to new journalists coming out here, what will you tell them? What's the best advice you will give them?
First, I'll say don't forget our lovely guest here. You shoot some questions to her. But for me, just keep working. Just keep working at it. As everything else in life, practice. Write your stories, and don't give up.
Okay. Do you share the same sentiments as Mr. Haynes?
Well, yeah, somewhat. Being young in the media has its challenges, right, of course, but I seem to think of it as having a fresh pair of eyes as well, so I can see a story from maybe a couple angles as well. And the older people, I can draw on their experience, of course, but being young means that the stories are fresh. And I could probably see something that maybe, somebody who has, 30, 40 years in journalism may not see. And personally, I like learning, about things, about stories. Parliament, for instance, very complicated. Just reporting on Parliament alone, court reporting, very, very complicated. And it's just a learning process. And I know, you are in Costa and learning journalism at present, and that's very admirable. Here's what, your master's degree is probably in the field, right? There's nothing like working in the field. The classroom is totally different. And you would probably learn a whole lot more in the field. At
this point, we'd like to take questions from someone else in the media. This has been very one-sided at this point. I see we have another journalist. Remember to say your name and where you're from.
Good day. My name is Ariel Collins, and I'm from Costat as well. I would like to ask a question to both of you, actually. Do you believe the ever-increasing need for ratings affects the delivery of news, and in a way that it drives media houses to sensationalize issues rather than simply delivering the information?
I shall let Vishal.
That is an excellent question, actually, Ariel. And the need for ratings. Now, remember, media houses, they function as a business as well, right? That's important. So it's the business aspect, right? And then there's what we do. Right, and yes, of course, ratings are important. Everybody wants the #1 show and everybody wants the #1 newscast, right? But me personally, I do my job. I work in news, I do my job, and I have to make sure that the reporting, the writing, everything is fair and balanced, as objective as I can be. Right, so while I know the media managers are the ones, I would just let them care about the business aspects, and personally, I just do my job.
Yeah, I think sensationalized, I absolutely despise that word. You can write a story in so many different ways, and if there's something, again, at the end of the day, you have to explain to people why this is news. The whole man bites dog versus dog bites man. So if I covered a story, and you know what, if the most new aspect of this story comes off a little sensational, then that's essentially what happened. I didn't make anything up, as long as you don't make anything up. And at the end of the day, you want people to watch your newscast. I don't think you're ever going to lie about something that happened to bring ratings. At least you shouldn't. And you should never deliberately manipulate anything to make it more sexy, for lack of a better word, to make sure that people watch. But at the end of the day, you know what? You are going to put some of your stories that are going to grab those eyes. You're going to put that on the top of the newscast. And as I said earlier, energy reporting, you're going to bury that because people may not seem to like it.
Well, then, when you're writing a story, what exactly is the effect you would like to have on your audience?
You want them to be informed and entertained, in that order. Informed first. They have to know what happened, the basics, who, what, when, where, how. And at the end of the day, they can't be bored by it, and they can't be confused by it. And if my takeaway is, sometimes it could be, well, here's a funny thing that happened, or sometimes it could be the complete opposite. This is, guys, this is a big deal. This is a call to action. Something kind of needs to be done. Or it could be somebody who needs help. If you're doing a story about a mother who's lost her home and she needs help. Every story is different, so you have to craft it based on, you're right, what you want out of it. But I'm being yelled at in my ear right now, so I have to take control of this again. We're going to take a quick break and be right back. More questions from the Costad students. Welcome back. So we have students from Costat throwing questions at us. I believe we had one more from Ariel.
Okay. Situations may occur where information generally believed to be true becomes disproved. Do you believe journalists should be held accountable for any possible misinformation they deliver to the public, taking into consideration the importance of integrity in this field?
And welcome to the reason for in conclusion. But I'll let you take this question first.
Okay, well, wow, that's a really long question, a very tricky question. Information that initially you believe to be true, but it is then disproved. Yes. Well, it depends on where the information came from in the first place. You understand? if you have information in your hand, like somebody gives you a document, like an official, and there's information there, you report on that information because that's the official giving you. That's what you have. And then later on, you found out that maybe they pull a fast one on you and they give you something really inaccurate.
Well, not even a fast one. Look at the issue with the AG's letters, the AG's fees, lawyers' fees.
Right.
Yeah. That document came from Parliament, and now we're hearing that it's wrong and it's being disproved.
Right,
so
and
at that point,
and whatnot.
Right. So at the end of the day, you can make an apology if that happens, and that's the first step, because it's the first draft of history. Sometimes, inevitably, you might get something wrong. And you have to be able to stand up and say, I made a mistake, and I publicly apologize. Some people do that, some people don't. And then at the end of the day, but you should be held accountable. Not every time you should be fired or dragged across the coals, like
dragged through the mud, yeah. And I find that's becoming a trend.
It is
right?
becoming a trend.
And to be fair, we're just doing our jobs, but I'm a big fan of saying everything. So if in the future something is disproved, as you say, I would come out and I would say, well, just black is white. This is what I had in the beginning. This is what I have now. You take it at face value. And it's very important that members of the public get to make up their own mind. And it's something that I stick to in my newscasts. I just want to give them all the information I possibly can and let them make up their own mind. The style, that's part of it as well. It's the headline, the attention grabbers, the chair story. Tea and tech and chair story. That was an attention grabber as well. But you give them all the information they need, right? ABC, and the style of reporting comes in the way you write it, cheeky, as you used your word the other day, and
But I'm going to turn it around a little bit, because I do really want to hear from you guys. So you are journalism students. What is it that you might have seen? Think of it like driving a car. When you're learning 10 at 2 everything, but when you get your license, you're rocking back. That happens in journalism as well. We tend to forget some of the fundamentals. What have you seen that we've done right or wrong? Not even necessarily in this last week, but at the time that you've been studying.
To be fair, a lot of things that we see today, we may think, it's easy for them to do it. They're getting help from social media. They get information from various sources who they can pick up a phone easily instead of walking on the streets and getting stories. So we think, it is easy at one point.
So we've gotten lazier, you're trying to say?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying you got lazy, but there's a point where we're on the outside. We're still on the outside, and when we look at our journalists today, we think they have it easy because of the means that they got the news.
But you do reporting, so do you find that it's also easier when you're? I'm sure you do some reporting in class.
Sometimes no, because you have to decipher which is real and which is not real, which is being sensationalized. And the thing about it is, it plays a lot in the influence that you have when telling a story, because you might go online and see people making a big hullabaloo about something, and then that influences how you write your story. Back then, 15, 20 years ago, this wasn't the case. You get a story, you write it, and hope for the best that people take on a story. Now, you actually know what's going to happen to your story before it even hits the pavement, right? So, I would say that it's a bit, it's not as clear-cut as we may think it is. So yes, you all have an advantage, and at the same time, that advantage could be a disadvantage.
So what have you seen? Is there any specific story that you would have seen that you're like, oh God, that's completely against what we learned in class last week? Don't be afraid to call names. That's what you should. Call my name if you have to.
I haven't seen any story in particular, but I have observed a trend per se where it would seem as if certain journalists would stick to a particular type of story. So I wouldn't want to say that they are one-dimensional, but it almost seems as if they are. Maybe somewhat sticking to a comfort zone.
Well, actually, beat reporting is very important, and I think that's what we lack here in Trinidad. It's better if you have a journalist well, doing this one sort of thing, so that's your beat, and you get stories that other people won't get because you're so embedded in it. And beat reporting, again, is what makes you not jump from one day you're reporting on crime, and then you're tossed into energy, and then you're tossed into parliament. Right. And sometimes you know it's on a surface level, but the depth. So have you seen any issues of ethics that might have come up that you guys will use in class? Come on, don't be afraid to call names. I'm putting myself out.
Okay, let's just backtrack a little bit. For Carnival, right, when we had our opposition leader with the the front page, right, with dancing with the underage girl, whatever she was. It's sort of disrespectful in a sense. Yes, he was dancing with her, but she's still probably a minor. She didn't have to be on the front page. She didn't have to be on.
You think it was blown out of proportion?
Yeah, definitely. Yes. To me, it definitely was blown out of proportion. She didn't have to be there. Why is it made a big deal? Yes, he may have been dancing with someone, but why show her? Why not blur the face? Why not get another story to make something a front page?
Kind of comes across as the same thing I was talking about previously about sensationalism.
Yeah. Well, point taken. I can't criticize your comment at all. I agree. It was blown out of proportion. I got bored of it, like how you got bored with the bloggers.
Yeah, I got extremely bored of that story.
Yeah, it was like, come on. 2 days later, I was wondering why I was just like, let her parents take over. Okay, what's in other news? That's just how the cookie crumbles sometimes in media. But there's some things I appreciate. There's some things I don't appreciate. That bored me to death.
But was that sort of blown out of proportion? Sorry, because we are in an election year.
Quite possibly, yeah. Let me just say a hard yes right now. I want to say a hard yes. I don't want to say possibly anymore. Yes, it was.
The case, right? If it was blown out because of election year and all these things, why is it that the fourth pillar, the fourth state, has to be influenced by election year? Why can't they say that's your drama, let us stick to the news?
Well, because everything that these politicians do at this point is up for debate, and we have to do it. But as sweet as this discussion is going, we have to end. But this is only the first of a collaboration with Costa. So you might be back, or some of your peers might be back. We're definitely going to keep these conversations going. So if you might have seen something different on the set, it's not just the fact that I was sitting and I'm standing. We got some mugs, so I want to thank Simply Personal for giving us these, because no journalist should be without a cup of coffee or whiskey or whatever is inside of here. But that's the end of our show. This was In Conclusion for another week. Remember, we're going to be back here at 7:30 on Saturday nights. A brand new week of news begins right now.